let's talk about something that y'all are experts in. These West Virginia Mountaineers, okay? And so the big, utterance on everyone's lips is, are the happy days back? Is Rich Rodriguez going to be the guy who brings West Virginia back to regularly competing for conference championships, dare I say national championships? What's the vibe like, y'all? How confident is Morgantown, and how confident should Morgantown be about this hire?
Oh, you go first, man.
Well, if you let Rich Rodriguez tell it, very. As a matter of fact, he talks about national championships. He's mentioned it on multiple separate podcasts, unsolicited. So he's saying it. I think he was close before. We know that. It's a different time. It's a different era. But I have confidence that we're going to win again. I have confidence that we're going to win conference championships again. I do think we'll get there. I've seen it with this guy, and the culture has already changed, to the point to where kids are expecting to win. Jamori Robinson went on a podcast yesterday, and even he's talking about, Big 12 championship, college football playoff. Even if it's not possible for this team, I think they believe it. And that's the kind of confidence that Rich Rodriguez instills in his players. And I'm not trying to down Neil Brown out the door here. I just don't think he did that. For whatever other his faults are, I don't think he instilled the confidence in his players that we are going to win like Rich Rod does. It's totally different kind of dudes. And it's probably not fair to compare Neil Brown really to Rich Rod. Like, I think they're just two different classes of coach. I mean, that's improving over time. Rich Rod's almost got 200 wins. He took Arizona to a BCS game, for God's sakes. This doesn't happen. He took Jacksonville State from the FCS to FBS conference champions in 2 years.
With less talent, by the way.
With way less talent. So he took 60 new players on a roster last year at Jacksonville State, started 0-3, and then won 8 straight games to win the conference championship. So I think he's proven it every time he's been given the opportunity. And he'll tell you, he's been given all the resources, even so far as to he even got to his pick of the litter of defensive coordinators, probably in the country. He was able to go spend $2 million to poach a sitting SEC defensive coordinator that Oklahoma didn't want to lose. They tried to keep him, but they gave Rich Rod enough resources to be able to go get that guy. And it's paying dividends on the defensive side of the ball for sure. I think the talent acquisition is very underrated. It's not going to be with Rich Rod 5-star guys. It's going to be his kind of guys, which was how it was last time. And he wins with his kind of guys. That's just what it is. That's my belief when it comes to Rich Rod. If he gets his guys, he'll win.
Yeah, I mean, the outside noise, nobody is expecting. Nobody. I mean,
no.
The guy who owns this channel did a show today basically saying Rich Rod he has no chance, basically. Shout out to Mark Rogers. I like Mark.
He's a historian,
But Rich Rod is not like any of those other guys. I mean, he's different. Everybody wants to point to that 3-year stint at Michigan when it's literally the least amount of time he has spent at any school. Paul mentioned Arizona, what he did at Jacksonville State. He wins and if Michigan had given him another year, he would have taken that team to a Big 12 championship. I have no doubt in my mind in at least the next 1 to 2 years. But they didn't give him enough time because he wasn't a Michigan man. And is he going to do it in year 1? Maybe not, but I guarantee you by year 2 or 3, he's competing for he's at least in the conversation for a Big 12 championship game. And West Virginia's back to being West Virginia of old, not, winning 8-9 games a year, in my opinion. I'm not going to sit here and, go pie in the sky and say they're going to win the Big 12 every year and anything crazy. But I do think they'll be better. I think they'll be back to the West Virginia of old, back to winning 8-9 games a year with the occasional 10-win season. And again, he's not going to recruit a ton of 5-star guys, but he will find those guys either guys that nobody else wants, or guys who might not be highly recruited, or even guys who may not be playing the same position that he wants them to play because nobody else thinks they can play it. And he'll put them where he wants them, and he'll make them fit into his scheme. And another people don't realize, Rich Rod is one of the brightest offensive minds in the history of college football. Okay. his teams are going to score points. So what that means is all you got to have a defense that can step up and just be decent. You don't even have to be great on defense. You just have to be good to average, and you can win football games with him. And I think
we feel like we got that guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So
I mean, there's more returning production on the defensive side of the ball than the offensive side of the ball. Actually, when you look at Eddie V and Sonny Redwood and Ben Cutter and Reed Carrico,
Hammond Russell,
and he mentioned Jamoy Robinson earlier, the transfer. He's a stud. I mean, it just, I think he's very underrated. Excitement is, brewing around Morgantown. I know that people on the outside are picking West Virginia to finish last, but you know what? That's okay. That's exactly where we want them to pick us. And that's exactly what Zach Alley said the other day. He loves being the underdog, and they will take that chip on their shoulder and ride it to every game. They're going to use it for fuel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and hey, as a TCU fan, there is really something to be said for a coach that finds his guys and can develop them, right, and build a team the way he wants to build it. And I'll tell you what, y'all have a dang good athletic director, a guy I was kind of hoping that we might swipe from you, but that didn't pan out. But do you think, because we're in a whole new era of college football here now, right? Now it's not just about developing guys. You got to also retain that talent. Do you feel like y'all have the NIL resources and a plan in place to retain those guys once you do develop them into those special players?
I think Rich Rod thinks he does. He said it himself, once again, leaning on what Rich Rod said. Like he said on Josh Pateso, we may not have the extra stuff that some other programs have, but we have what we need to get to the playoff. Let's just say that. He said win a national championship. Like I said, he said it unsolicited on multiple different fronts now, multiple different shows. Keeps bringing it up. I think it eats at him. I think it's his one thing, right? I mean, we all know what happened against Pitt, 13-9. We missed the national championship. We've got Pat McAfee and Ken Kendrick, the billionaire, backing him 100% into this, and I think he can get what he needs when he needs it. Evidenced by Jamoy Robinson, a guy that won the American Conference Defensive Player of the Year last year and was projected second-round pick in the NFL draft this year. They paid that guy, well, third round, but they paid that guy not to go anywhere. They got a Michael Coates Jr. who was supposed to go visit Ole Miss, and the rumor is that they paid him not to do that too. They said, hey, why don't you just not go to Ole Miss and stay here? And they've done that over and over again with different guys. So I have no doubts. I think that it's going to be interesting to see the way it plays out, because I did a show yesterday on outside of the $20.5 million. What's that look like for every program? How stringent are they on those deals? Because if we're talking about everybody's playing within a cap, I believe that Rich Rodriguez will be great there. They've already adopted an NFL model. They're going to be able to spend to the limit on the cap every year. They've already added $250 per student per year at the school for an extra $6.5 million a year in revenue to add to that 20.5. So, it's just, you're talking about boosters and outside influences. How much of an advantage do other teams have above us at that point? I think that will be where the question is ultimately answered.
Yep. I mean, Paul said it well. I mean, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Paul said it well. I agree with him. I mean, I think they've got what it takes. Again, West Virginia's a school that's always going to have to punch a little bit above their weight class, but that's kind of the whole Big 12 conferences, with the exception of a couple of schools, are kind of in that same boat. I mean, every school in this conference is going to have to do that. And I think West Virginia is sitting in a good spot to do that within the conference they're in, and should be able to compete year in, year out in that conference.
Yes, great answer. So I just put this question from Stormy Cyclone just up here on the screen. It's specifically for you, Coos, but Paul, you can, of course, answer it as well. The term retread getting thrown around with regard to Rich Rod. Like we've got Scott Frost going back to UCF, Rich Rod going back to West Virginia. Stormy Cyclone wants to know, do you feel like that term is a little bit disrespectful with regard to Rich Rodriguez? What do you think about that?
I don't think it's disrespectful. I mean, I don't really look at it as being disrespectful, to be honest. I probably used it myself, to be honest. It's just a general term. I guess it depends on the context in which they're using it. But I don't look at it as disrespectful personally, just that term itself.
Yeah, I think because of the connotation associated with the retread, I could see how somebody would, because it's used as a as a negative term now, right? Retread hire. Like it's, people, when people say that, I automatically think it's not going to work. And like Koo said in the open, the reason it's different, I'll give a couple different reasons. I think for one, how many of these retreads were as successful as Rich Rodriguez in their first stint that haven't worked the second time around? Not many. Maybe Bill Snyder was he was definitely more successful his first time, but I think Bill Snyder's the closest thing we've come to a successful second stint, right? But nobody's had to do this in this era. Nobody yet, right? We're just now seeing it for the first time. There's only been 7 or 8 ever. So, with that, so it's really not a great big sample size. You say retreads never work in football, but there's not been enough of them to really actually definitively say that if you were doing a case study or something. So while that may be true, I just think in the portal era that you can't say what's going to work or what won't work because things aren't the same. Teams aren't built over 4 years or 6 years like they were before. So.
And another thing to compare to the ones Mark was talking about in his show today, the Bill Snyders, the Mac Browns, most of those guys, not all of them, most of them sat out of coaching for several years before they went back. Rich Rod only was out of coaching, if I'm not mistaken, 1 year before he got back in as a coordinator or in some position on a staff somewhere, whether it be a head coach or coordinator. He was in an analyst for a year somewhere. I think it was Hawaii. So, I mean, he's been in coaching with the exception of, I think, 1 season. So he didn't lose, he didn't have to worry about wearing the rust off or whatever. I mean, because I'm sure that can happen with coaches like any other job. He never got out of it. And the 1 year he was out of it, he was on TV. So I just, and again, most of those coaches can't claim the level of offensive success. I mean, he basically invented an offense, okay, that is now used throughout college football and even pro football now.
Urban Meyer just admitted that with him on the show,
correct.
2 weeks ago?
Yeah. I mean, he's been called the Athletic the other day called him the godfather of the zone read offense. What other coach on that list can say that? I don't know of one. Chip Kelly used to go for him to learn about it. And then Chip Kelly ended up taking that to a national championship game and then on to the NFL. I mean, most of the coaches on that quote-unquote retread list don't have the pedigree, in my opinion, at least on the offensive side of the ball, that Rich Rod has, and I think that can separate him from the rest of the pack.
Yeah, those are great points, y'all. I mean, because, it's very situationally when you're looking at these other retread hires, like this isn't a situation where this is a guy who retired or he's a guy who got fired. Some TCU fans are like, we should bring back Gary Patterson. Like, well, we let him go for a reason, or like Scott Frost, who, yes, he was hired away by a big brand name, but he's struggled mightily ever since then. Rich Rod was hired away by a big brand name. And with the exception of that Michigan stint, which, I mean, you said it, Goose, he didn't quite get enough time to actually build something.
Less than 3 years.
He's been really successful everywhere,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I mean, I feel like if you're sitting there with the West Virginia hat on, like there's no reason to believe, why can't he come back and build this thing again? And Paul, you were talking about culture change before we started recording. Me and Goose were talking about the thing that's been all around social media. Oh my gosh, Rich Rod has banned TikTok. What do you think about that decision and any other culture changes that Rich Rod is implementing at West Virginia to turn him into a winner again?
I think, the banning the TikTok dancing thing, it's so specific, right? It's not that we can't be on TikTok, and it's not even that you can't really dance on TikTok. Well, he doesn't want you to dance on TikTok, but specifically it's like a locker room thing. Like apparently he's looking at it as some players came to him and said, hey, I was changing and a guy's dancing here, right? And I think that's how he's approaching it. Also with the hard edge motto that he has adopted, which is repeated as anything I can remember, as much as Trust the Climb was with Neil Brown, at least. It's mentioned in every interview, every segment that every coach does, every player does. Hard edge, hard edge, hard edge. And all that is a style of coaching that Rich Rod has, right? We asked the question earlier, what does Rich Rod look like in camp settings now that things have changed? Is he softer? Is he easier to deal with? No. These kids are coming in. He's screaming at them. He's yelling at them, and he's telling them to their face openly. They've got this recorded, I think. If you don't like to be coached like this, we don't want you anyway. and that's just how he is.
Yep.
Why he didn't work at Michigan, by the way. The main reason he didn't work at Michigan was because of how hard of a coach he is on players. These 5-star kids had options.
Yeah.
So to your point, though, as far as culture, yeah, the TikTok ban thing is hilarious, but it's also he doesn't care, because if you don't want to be coached hard and want football to be first, he doesn't want you anyway. That's the truth. It's really as hard line as you can be about it. But that's how he is. And they say he's as intense of a person as anybody's ever met. Like I've asked probably 20 players this offseason about that. I say, is he really as intense as we all hear? They said, yeah, he's super intense guy that's literally obsessed with football, as a lot of coaches are. You know, I'm not saying it's unique to him, but you know, are we going to win the national championship or anything like that? I'm not saying all that. I'm just saying I have way more hope than I ever could have under Neil Brown, unfortunately. And, you know, like I said earlier too, I hate to keep comparing the two, but they're right one from end to the other. So we're coming from that into this, and it's just so different. The players are expecting to win now. That's the culture. I think they weren't before. I think they were, you know, Jamori Robinson, like I said yesterday on Voice of Morgantown show, he said, I don't know what the number is. Well, you want me to say 11-1, 12-0? Like, that's what he was saying. You know, like, that's their expectation. Whether it actually happens or not, that's what they believe. I think that's a culture change.
That belief is half the battle, truly.